Hey, guess what? It is Wally's Tequila and Toy Time, so, for that sake, cheers.
I make him shiver, their knees get weak. Whenever I'm around, they see me walk, they hear me talk. I make them feel like they're on cloud nine.
Hey, welcome to the review. So today we're going to go over two different Shawn Michaels wrestling figures. One of them released back in 1996, and this one almost 2 decades later, just about in 2016. So at first I said I'd only be doing episodes on Fridays, but you know what? I'm having fun doing this, plus more practice is good for me, so if I have free time or I'm feeling froggy during the week, and I want to pop up an extra episode or two a week, I might be doing that from time to time. So I could drop something at any time on you guys. I'll probably stay consistent with the Friday shows, but you'll see some extra coming up here and there. So again, we're going to talk about both of these figures. They depict the same match, the same attire, but obviously they were released 20 years apart, so we're not going to judge one off the other. Obviously, as time goes on, figures get more modernized, they get more detailed, articulated. They also cost more at retail. So we're just going to look at both of these, and it's my favorite wrestler, one of my favorite ring attires of his, so it'll be fun to go through these figures.
Let me tell you something, Jack.
Alright, so here we have the WWF Superstars Series 3 bone-crunching action Shawn Michaels figure. And, I mean, look at that old school Jakks Pacific logo. God, do I love it. I'm nostalgic about a lot of figures, but wrestling figures, they were then and still are the majority of my toy collection. Sheer volume-wise, there's nothing I've ever collected like wrestling figures. And in specific, honestly, the bone-crunching action figures of the 90s were my jam. When I first got into wrestling, I got into these. I kind of backtracked and collected some LJN and Hasbro and got really into those a little bit later on, but this was actually my first wrestling figure of all time, the Series 3 Shawn Michaels. I said earlier it was released in 96. Honestly, this particular version maybe was released at the beginning of 97. I'm not sure. You know what? Check out the BCA thread on the WrestlingFigs.com forums. There's a lot of great information there. Shout out to Chicago for giving a lot of great information. He's a user over there. Vintage Jakks BCA, great guy. So let's get back to it. Again, super nostalgic about this. Shawn Michaels was and is my favorite wrestler. This is my first figure ever of him. So, I mean, when I was a little kid, I was just stoked to have it. And listen, bone-crunching action figures in the wrestling genre kind of get overlooked, I think, a little bit. People are crazy nostalgic about Hasbro and LJN, but I think these figures are a bit overlooked. I mean, they really, as far as playability went, if you were actually a kid having wrestling matches and you wanted to do real moves that wrestlers actually did, these figures were your best bet. They kind of changed the game. The way the limbs moved, the kind of bendiness of the arms and legs, the articulation compared to Hasbro's and LJN's, which had zero articulation. Hasbro had a little bit, but I mean, these were the first wrestling figures, in my opinion, where you could really have a full-fledged figure match with all kinds of crazy moves. You could pull off gut wrench power bombs, hurricane ranas, suplexes, pile drivers, all kinds of crazy shit. So I had so much fun back in the day. I think my first match I ever had as a kid, if I can remember right, was this versus the Superstar Series 3 re-release of Goldust as well. But let's get into the figure. So this is essentially the WWF Superstar Series 1 Shawn Michaels, just repackaged and re-released, but it's not 100% the same. There are a few minor differences. Again, I might be missing a couple things. Check out the BCA thread. That's all I can tell you. You'll find it there. But it's a Series 1 figure, but for one thing, the quality control in Series 1 was known not to be the greatest. I think the limbs fell off far more easily. So I think by here in the very beginning of 97, they had a little more durability, a little more sturdiness to the figures. Also, as you can see, there's that silver WWF logo stand, which I love, with the peg right in there. So that goes into the foot on this. There's a hole in the foot on the bottom so it could stand on there properly. Series 1 didn't have the stands. So they also didn't have the peg hole. So I believe that's the only differences. Again, I could be missing something minor, something else, but we'll get into the figure itself. So this is not an unboxing, sorry. I've had plenty of versions of this figure loose. I beat them all to crap when I was a kid. This one, for nostalgic reasons, because I want to hang it on my wall, display it in my figure room, I'm just keeping it right in the package. But we could still really deep dive this figure anyway. So let's take a look. It's the 1995 SummerSlam attire. That's when Shawn Michaels had his second ladder match against Razor Ramon. A lot of people prefer that first one. I'll be honest with you, I love it, but I actually like the second one better, and it might just be because I enjoyed 95 Shawn Michaels better than 94 Shawn Michaels, but whatever. I'm also going to disclose something quite personal here. I have a strange obsession / infatuation with Shawn Michaels ring attire. When I was a kid watching, it was right in the heyday of Shawn Michaels, and he had all these cool different ring outfits. They were sparkly, they were shiny, sequins, all the heart designs, all the, the zebra stripes, the color combinations. I just thought like his ring outfit was like the coolest thing ever. I'm sure a lot of little kids thought that at the time too. Very flashy, very flamboyant. So I used to love just getting different versions of Shawn Michaels and all different colorways and all that kind of stuff. So the attire is pulled off pretty well. You can see the hearts there. You can see the zebra stripes. You know what? If you go back, there were original prototype pictures of this figure before it was released. And actually, I'm speaking of the Series 1 version, way back at the beginning of the line, where these tights were pretty much more fleshed out. They looked a lot more like the actual 1995 SummerSlam attire. There was more detail. But either way, this is kind of a scaled down, simplified version. But still, for me as a kid, for the time period, the tights were cool. And as you see on the side here, Shawn Michaels has these kind of motocross type wrestling boots that he wore at the time. They were not your typical wrestling boot. And again, this whole mold for Shawn Michaels from Series 1, which is the released version, Series 3, all the figures obviously had their own sculpt. They weren't reusing parts yet. It was the first line. It was the first wave. The only kind of head scratcher here, arm pads. Elbow pads. I don't remember Shawn Michaels ever wearing elbow pads in the history of his career, to be honest with you. Except if he had an injury, I think, on one arm, he'd wear a white one with a patch later on. But he did not wear elbow pads. So for some reason, they gave this Shawn Michaels figure elbow pads. That's a head scratcher, once again. The head sculpt is what it is. It's pretty cool. I didn't mind it as a kid. Obviously, nowadays, compared to modern face printing tech and all the stuff we see on figures, this might look a little primitive or goofy or whatever. I know a lot of people didn't like the head sculpts on the Bone Crunchers, but again, as a kid, I didn't mind. I'm just kind of nostalgic about it. I'm used to it. Do I think they do better now? Yeah, probably, but still cool. They made a decision to keep the earrings on, the entrance earrings on there. I don't mind that either, actually. And again, it might just be because I'm nostalgic about this figure, but I don't mind that either. Look at the back of the package here. And that's Superstar Series 3. Again, I'm just so nostalgic about all this shit right here. The Monster Ring, love it. Series 3, some re-releases in it, but overall cool line. That was the first time we got kind of a 90s Bulldog, a 90s Sid, and it's the first ever Mankind figure, so very cool figure. I think for the time period it was released in, it's pretty darn good. I mean, the overall sculpting, again, the prototype had more detailed tights, but still, I loved it. He has his signature Shawn Michaels motocross boots. And for Bone Crunchers, obviously the playability was great. And I love this figure, still do. So now let's move on to 20 years in the future, in 2016, when this same SummerSlam 95 attire was released by Mattel in the Elite Collection and Network Spotlight series. Sadly, Toys R Us no longer with us in most of the world. I know Canada has it, but let's take a look at Shawn Michaels Network Spotlight. All right, now we have the 2016 release, the WWE Network Spotlight Elite Shawn Michaels, again, based on a SummerSlam 1995 attire. We're talking 20 years in the future, so obviously there is some more advancement, more paint deco and detail. But without too much of a preface, let's open the figure up. Now this one, unlike the last one, we will actually open up. Look at this box. It's in crap shape. I've already opened this, to be honest with you, so I don't mind looking at it again. So let's get into the figure in detail. All right, we have this figure loose here, so let's take a look. Now, there's a lot to love about this figure. For me, again, I keep repeating it, but for nostalgia reasons, it's an attire and a look I always wanted, but there's also things to nitpick on it. So for one, let's get into the sculpt. That sculpt is a very divisive thing. I remember when this figure first, when the photos first came out for it, a lot of people in the figure forums and whatnot, they were very very negative against this sculpt. For a lot of people, it's a deal breaker. For me, I'm not that brutal with it. It's not a deal breaker on this figure. But it's kind of meh. It's an okay sculpt for Shawn Michaels. I feel like historically through Jakks Pacific, Mattel, etc., that Shawn Michaels and actually Bret Hart too are two of those where there's a hard time about nailing those sculpts. I don't know what it is about those two, but very few of them really look like the guy. They're just harder to capture for whatever reason. I see the look that Mattel was going for. In '95, Shawn Michaels had that kind of strange hair. I mean, he had the mullet previously. He was trying to grow it out long, to have completely long hair, so it was kind of a weird haircut to begin with. So I get what they were going for with this '95 look. I don't think it really looks like Shawn Michaels. I'll be honest with you. It's not the most offensive. It's not the worst sculpt that I've ever seen, so I'm not going to totally trash it. But it's kind of meh. It's kind of okay. It's kind of 50-50. It kind of looks like Shawn Michaels. I get what they were doing, but is it a spectacular sculpt? No, not by any means. But anyway, let's move on to the main highlight of the figure. So to me, again, knowing my recently confessed obsession with all things Shawn Michaels ring attire and tights, let's take a look at them. This is the main selling point of this figure for me. Look at those freaking tights. I mean, it really looks like the '95 SummerSlam Shawn Michaels ring attire. The hearts look perfect. Look at all those lines. Look at all those zebra stripes. A lot of deco on there. A lot of detail. The white boots, cool. And then look at the back. You have the Heartbreak Kid logo. The font, the logo is perfect. It's perfectly placed. They really nailed this attire, and you know what? It's one of my favorite attires. So the fact that Mattel was able to pull this off perfectly, in my opinion, that's enough for me to get this figure with my nostalgia value. Now, I could also nitpick from the... Oh, god damn it. So sorry about that. I can nitpick from the waist down as well. No knee pads, and I'll be honest with you. With Shawn Michaels, his attire... the knee pads were a big prominent part. And once again, it's one of the things that kind of wrestling figure collectors have been complaining about for some years, the lack of knee pads at Shawn Michaels figures. Recently, Mattel has been much better. The basic 100 Shawn Michaels figure. Both the regular and chase versions, they're two different attires. They both have knee pads. The recent Ultimate Edition Shawn Michaels, the '97 Screwjob version, really detailed knee pads. So they're getting better. Hopefully they keep releasing every subsequent version of Shawn Michaels with knee pads from now on, because honestly the tights just don't look right without them. But we kind of have a little bit of a naked and complete look on those knee pads. So again, to go overall about the figure, I think it's a great figure. The sculpt leaves some to be desired. The lack of knee pads, yes, but to me, again, it might just be the nostalgia speaking, in all honesty. But the tights were the main point of this figure. And if you look back at that BCA figure I showed you, I mean, come on. Look at this version. This is what I wanted in '96. Again, the hearts are perfect, the designs are perfect. Knee pads and a better head sculpt would have really made this the best. But again, it's not perfect, but a great figure nonetheless. So let's put Shawn to the side. He has only one accessory. He comes with this ladder. And yes, in the '95 ladder match between Razor and Shawn at SummerSlam, it was an orange ladder, in fact. So this accessory makes sense. I would have liked an IC title with him, to be honest. He won the IC title there. He should have had it. It's a little neon from the color scheme, but still, this ladder totally makes sense. So once again, a great figure. Some things to be desired, but overall, totally quality.